What's going on, guys? Welcome to my Descendant build series for the First Descendant. Today we're going over my builds for Nell.
All the cards on the battlefield are in my hands.
Nell is the newest Descendant to join the ranks, and she's an absolute beast. She's a non-attribute Descendant that uses powerful telekinesis to control the battlefield. Since she's new, let's go over her abilities and what they do. Note that some information has changed from my earlier pre-release showcase of her abilities. Her passive ability is called Suspicion and Insight. This ability gives Nell a 30% increase to her weak point damage and also allows her to use her Receive Scan to mark enemies with a purple triangle. These marked enemies take additional damage, so make sure you scan often. Killing a marked enemy will pass the mark on to other enemies around them. Nell also has the same dominance over the encrypted storage vaults that Enzo does, meaning that she can open them easier than the rest of the Descendants. Nell's first ability, Breach Projection, fires a barrage of breach shards forward, dealing damage to enemies. Enemies marked by your Receive Scan take additional damage. This ability has the Piercing Projectile, Multi-Explosive Projectile, and Stack trigger tag. Her second ability is called Breach Link. This ability places a ring on the ground that has multiple functions. By itself, it inflicts a dot on enemies as well as a gradual movement speed reduction. If you press the button again, the ring will explode, causing a large burst of damage and recalling the ring. This also reduces your cooldown and increases your movement speed. Lastly, you can activate her third ability, which will suck all of the enemies into the center, much like Lepic's Traction Grenade. Note that you can do a little 1-2 punch with this. So, for example, if you put her 2 down, then press 3. This will cluster all the enemies up. You can then place a second ring down and blow it up. This causes massive damage to the clustered enemies. It's also very situational on how you want to use this. Each of the 3 versions being different, so it's very situational depending on what you're doing. As you play her, you'll kind of get a feel for when to do what. This ability has Install, Global Dot, Slow, Weaken, Charge, and Acceleration Enhancement trigger tags. This brings me to Nell's third ability, Gravitic Reversal, which detonates the ring and sucks enemies into its center like a black hole. Note that this can only be used while her 2, i.e. the ring, is up. This ability has Chained, Neutralize, Destruction, and Tow trigger tags. Her fourth ability is called Gaze of the Abyss. This is a buff that increases weak point damage for herself and her allies. It also guarantees that all of Nell's firearm attacks are weak point shots, which is just disgusting. Using her first ability while this is active will increase the duration of the buff. This ability has Firing Enhancement and Ally Enhancement trigger tags. For her transmod, she currently has 2. Shattered Heart and Restored Heart, and they're both quite useful depending on what you're doing. Shattered Heart alters her first and fourth, making her a pure DPS. Firing her first at enemies will now build up her custom resource, Suspicion, though only while they are marked by her Receive Scan, so keep that in mind. Her fourth now uses said built up stacks of Suspicion to create giant breach spikes, which she hurls forward for massive amounts of damage. Now these things are nasty. They'll even one-shot assault ships and take a nice fat chunk off of the HP of boss mob. Note that the amount of spikes she creates is dependent on the amount of Suspicion stacks she has, up to a maximum of 9. Using this transmod also gives her a 30% increase to her skill critical hit rate. This transmod changes the trigger tags for her fourth to Piercing Projectile, Multi-Explosive Projectile, and Aimed Shot. Now, Restored Heart is the exact opposite. This turns her into a support Descendant. it alters her second and third abilities, which now buff allies. Her second still places the ring, but now instead of dealing damage, it increases shield recovery and reduces damage taken for her and her allies. Pressing the ability again retrieves the ring and grants cooldown reduction. However, using her third ability to detonate the ring increases skill power and movement speed, as well as a burst recovery of shields to the party. This transmod changes the trigger tags of her second ability to install, charge, ally enhancement, and defense enhancement, and changes her third's tags to chained, charge, ally enhancement, arcane enhancement, and acceleration enhancement. The first build is a skill power based mobbing build. It uses the Shattered Heart transmod, and the mods for it are Shattered Heart, focus on fusion, front lines, focus on non-attribute, skill concentration, skill expansion, skill insight, MP conversion, emergency measures, nimble fingers, and increased HP. Here is the arcade tuning for this build, and you will want to use the non-attribute cohesion mutant cell. Her next build focuses on her firearms, and it does not use a transmod. The idea here is to activate her 4 and then keep pressing her first to keep the duration going as long as possible, kind of like Glazed Massacre Loop. The mods for this build are maximize range, increased HP, focus on non-attribute, nimble fingers, non-attribute amplification, skill expansion, MP conversion, focus on fusion, maximize conservation, and shot focus. And here is the arcade tuning for this build. And I use the burn vulnerability mutant cell since I use fire focused weapons. The next two builds are both hybrid type builds, one focusing on support and the other built specifically for void erosion purges. For the support build, you'll want to use the Restored Heart transmod. This build is great for bossing and even group play for harder content where buffing is needed, or if you just simply enjoy playing support characters. The mods for this are Restored Heart, Amplification Control, Passionate Sponsor, Focus on Non-Attribute, Nimble Fingers, Skill Expansion, Skill Extension, MP Conversion, Focus on Tech, Shot Focus, and Battle Stamina. The last build is designed for void erosion purges, but also works really well in boss fights if you'd rather be a DPS than a support. The mods for this are Shattered Heart, Focus on Fusion, Frontlines, Focus on Non-Attribute, Maximize Conservation, Skill Expansion, Skill Insight, Nimble Fingers, Skill Concentration, MP Conversion, and Increased HP. Here is the arcade tuning for these two builds. And this particular build uses two mutant cells, Defense Neutralization for the Malachite slot, and Burn Vulnerability for the Almandine slot. You can also use the RK Overheat Shield if you prefer. And as you can see here, I use the Death by 1,000 Cuts trigger module because all of her primary damage comes from projectiles, and the multi-explosive projectiles offer the most stacks from this trigger mod. This might change since trigger mods are new, but this is what I'm using right now. It seems to be doing great. For Nell, you'll want to use a fusion reactor. You can use a tech reactor while using the gun build if you want, but it's really not needed. For the external components, you will definitely want to use the Enlightened Mage set. It is by far the best set for her. Now, for the inversion reinforcement, I'm not maxed out yet, as it literally just came out, but here's what I plan on using when I can. For the weapons, I use the Secret Garden and the Last Dagger, depending on what I'm doing. I'm also building the new Exterminator, as it's really handy to have while running around and doing content in Axion. And here's the build for those. Nell is incredibly fun to play, and she's very versatile in terms of her differing playstyles. You can be a damager, a support, or a hybrid, and I really love that. It allows you to change it up and to keep things feeling fresh so they don't get too stale. Check out my other Descendant build videos, and please feel free to ask any questions you may have about this build or about Nell herself. And that's it for this video, guys. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Later.